My name is Anna, and this is the story of how I came to be the person I am today. I guess it all started with the family I was born into. My dad, Michael, was a mechanic with big dreams for his car repair shops, and my mom, Sarah, well, she was mostly just along for the ride. From the day I was born, it was pretty clear that my dad wanted a boy. I remember hearing stories from my Aunt Emily about how Dad's face fell when he first held me. Not exactly the warm welcome you'd expect for a newborn. I wanted a son, Sarah. You know that, I overheard him grumbling one evening. My mom, always trying to smooth things over, would just nod and try to change the subject. But she's healthy, Michael, isn't that what matters, she'd say. When I was 5, my little brother Lucas was born. That was the day I saw my dad smile a smile that reached his eyes, a rarity in those days. He was over the moon, passing out cigars to anyone who would take one. Finally, a real heir to carry on the business, he boasted to his friends at the shop. Life at home shifted dramatically with Lucas's arrival. All of a sudden, it was like I became invisible. My dad spent his days off teaching Lucas about tools and engines, even before the kid could walk properly. Meanwhile, I was pretty much left to my own devices. If it weren't for my grandparents and Aunt Emily, I don't know how I would have coped. They lived just a few houses down, and I was at their place more than I was at my own. Aunt Emily was another lifesaver. She didn't have kids of her own and seemed to get that life at my house wasn't exactly peachy. We'd spend afternoons at the park, and she'd listen to me ramble about school or whatever book I was reading. You know, kiddo, you're smarter than you think, she'd tell me as we walked home from the park. Don't let anyone, not even your dad, make you feel like you're second best. I clung to those words, especially on days when the difference in how my parents treated Lucas and me was blindingly obvious. Like that one time when my dad came home with a brand new bike for Lucas. I remember standing there, hoping maybe there was one for me too. Why would you need a bike, Anna? It's not like you go out much, Dad said with a shrug when he saw me eyeing the bike. I ran out of the house, tears stinging my eyes, straight to my grandma's. She was in her garden, as usual, and without a word, she opened her arms wide, and I buried my face in her apron. Let them talk, Anna. You're going to outshine them all one day, you'll see, she whispered as she stroked my hair. One chilly morning in October, right after my 10th birthday, my grandparents decided to surprise me with something special, a cell phone. It wasn't anything fancy, just one of those basic models that could make calls and send texts, but to me, it might as well have been a diamond. We were in their cozy kitchen, the smell of freshly baked cinnamon rolls still lingering in the air. Grandma handed me a small, wrapped box with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. Go on then, Anna, open it up. It's high time you had one of these. As I tore off the wrapping paper and saw what it was, my eyes must have been as big as saucers. Really? For me? I squeaked, hardly believing it. Of course, for you. Grandpa chuckled, his voice booming warmly. Every young lady needs to stay connected these days. I spent the next few hours fiddling with the phone, setting it up with Grandma's help, and saving their numbers as my first contacts. But my excitement was short-lived. The next day, I made the mistake of taking my new phone home. I was in the living room, showing it off to Aunt Emily, who had dropped by, when Dad walked in from work. What's that you've got there? His tone was more curious than kind, his eyebrows knitting together as he peered at the phone in my hands. It's my new phone. Grandma and Grandpa gave it to me, I said, a bit too eagerly. Dad's face hardened in an instant, and he reached out, snatching the phone from my grasp. This is too much for a kid your age. Lucas needs this more than you do. But, I started to protest, but Aunt Emily put a hand on my shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze, a silent signal not to argue. Lucas, who had been playing with his toy cars on the floor, looked up, clueless but interested in the sudden tension. Dad wasted no time, he shoved the phone into Lucas's hands. Here, son, you can have this. Learn to take good care of it. I felt a surge of anger and injustice boiling inside me, but before I could say another word, Aunt Emily steered me out of the room. Let's go for a walk, Anna. Cool down a bit, huh? Outside, Aunt Emily let out a long sigh. Your dad can be a real jerk sometimes, you know? But we've got your back. I don't get it, Emily. Why does he always do this? Why am I always the one who has to give up everything? My voice cracked, the hurt too raw to hide. Aunt Emily stopped walking and turned to face me, her expression serious. Listen, kid, life's not fair, especially not in your house. But remember, you're not alone. Let me talk to your grandparents. We'll sort this out. True to her word, Aunt Emily and my grandparents confronted Dad the following day. They didn't let up, arguing in hushed, tense tones in the dining room while I pretended not to listen from the stairs. Grandpa's voice was firm, a rare sternness to it. Michael, you had no right to take that phone from Anna. It was our gift to her, not yours to reassign to Lucas. Dad scoffed, dismissive as ever. Oh, come off it, Dad. It's just a phone. And Lucas is the one who needs it more. It's not about the phone, Mike. It's about respecting Anna and our choice to give her something. Grandma chimed in, her voice sharp with frustration. In the end, Dad grudgingly handed the phone back to me, his eyes avoiding mine. Here, take it. Just don't expect any more favors. Life has a way of throwing you curveballs, and mine came crashing down the autumn I turned 11. It was a day like any other. I was walking home from school, crunching the fallen leaves under my sneakers, when I noticed something off. The front door was open, and there were more cars parked outside our house than usual. As I walked in, the atmosphere hit me like a brick. My Aunt Emily was there, tears streaming down her face, while my parents stood off to the side, looking more annoyed than concerned. What's going on? I asked, dropping my school bag by the door. Anna, it's your grandparents, there's been an accident, Aunt Emily managed to say through sobs. A train accident, terrible thing, my dad added flatly, as if he was talking about a delayed delivery at his shop. The news shattered me. My grandparents weren't just family, they were my lifeline, the ones who made sure I felt loved when my own parents couldn't bother. Losing them felt like losing my entire world. The funeral was the hardest day. I remember standing there, the cold wind biting at my cheeks, listening to the murmurs of how tragic it was, how good they were, how unfair life could be. After the funeral, things moved quickly. My dad wasted no time. Emily, you need to clear out from their house. We're selling it. Need to cash in on the estate and settle things quickly, he said as we sat in the living room, still surrounded by condolence flowers. Aunt Emily, still raw from grief, looked at him like he was a stranger. Michael, can you hear yourself? Mom and Dad haven't even been gone a week, and you're already talking about money? Life goes on, Emily. We can't sit around and mope. There's a lot at stake. My mom chimed in, her voice cold and detached. That night, Aunt Emily packed up her things and moved into a small apartment just a few blocks from our house. She asked me to help her, probably to give me a break from the oppressive atmosphere at home. As we packed up her belongings, our conversation drifted to what was to come. Why are they so cold? How can they not care? I asked, frustration and sadness mingling in my voice. Some people just show their true colors at times like this, kiddo. But remember, you've got me. No matter what, I'm here, she assured me, pulling me into a hug. The loss of my grandparents was more than just an emotional blow, it changed my entire life setup. Suddenly, I was more of a maid than a daughter at home, cleaning and cooking because my mom decided it was time I learned to pull my weight. Aunt Emily's apartment became my refuge. It wasn't much, just a couple of small rooms, but it was filled with love and understanding, a stark contrast to the increasing coldness at my parents' house. I was still reeling from everything that had happened after losing my grandparents, when life decided to throw me yet another curveball. It was a typical Friday afternoon. I had just come home from school, expecting to find the usual empty house until my parents and brother got back. But today, even the emptiness felt different, everything was too quiet, too still. I walked up to the front door and found it locked. My heart started pounding as I realized something was off. I rang the doorbell a few times, waited, but no answer. It wasn't long before Mrs. Jenkins, the nosy neighbor from across the street, came out. Looking for your family, Anna, she called out from her porch, her voice carrying a mix of concern and curiosity. "Yeah, do you know where they went?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, they packed up some bags and drove off early this morning. Said something about a weekend trip. Didn't they tell you?" Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. "No, they didn't," I managed to say, feeling the sting of tears in my eyes. "How could they just leave me behind like that?" Mrs. Jenkins shook her head, muttering something about some parents before disappearing back into her house. I sat down on the front steps, not sure what to do or feel. The sky started to darken, and as the street lamps flickered on, the reality of my situation sunk in. I was truly alone. Hours must have passed before I finally stood up and made my way to Aunt Emily's apartment. The walk felt longer than usual, each step heavier with the weight of abandonment. When I finally got there and knocked, Aunt Emily opened the door almost immediately, worry etched all over her face. "What's wrong, Anna? What are you doing here so late?" she asked, pulling me inside. "Mom and Dad, they went away for the weekend. They locked the house and didn't tell me. I didn't know where else to go," I confessed, my voice breaking as the tears I'd held back started to flow. Aunt Emily's face hardened as she heard this, her usually warm eyes now sparking with anger. "They did what? That's it. I'm calling your father." She dialed the number, and after a few tense moments, Dad answered. I could only hear one side of the conversation, but Aunt Emily's tone was enough to tell me it wasn't going well. "Yes, Michael, your daughter, my niece, is here with me because you left her behind," she snapped into the phone. "No, this isn't just a little mistake. You can't just lock your child out and take off for the weekend." There was a pause as she listened to whatever excuse he was making up on the other end. "Well, if that's how you feel, then maybe Anna should just stay with me from now on." "Yeah, maybe that's for the best." She hung up before he could respond, her chest heaving with every angry breath. Then, turning to me, her expression softened. "You're staying here tonight, Anna. And as long as you need to. We'll figure this out together." Over the next few days, Aunt Emily made arrangements for me to stay with her permanently. My parents didn't object, perhaps out of indifference. Either way, it didn't matter to me anymore. Life with Aunt Emily was a breath of fresh air after everything that had happened. Even though her apartment was small and our budget tighter than ever, it felt like a mansion compared to the emotional prison of my parents' house. One Saturday morning, we sat at the tiny kitchen table, planning our budget with more precision than a military operation. Aunt Emily had always been resourceful, and now she passed on those skills to me. We clipped coupons, planned our meals around grocery sales, and even started a small herb garden on the windowsill to save money on spices. "So, we've got $20 left for the month. Think we can splurge on a little ice cream?" Aunt Emily asked, her eyes twinkling with mischief. I laughed, shaking my head. "Only if it's on sale. Remember, we're the queens of bargains now." That light-hearted moment underscored our new reality. We were in this together, come what may. School became another arena where I had to adjust. At first, I was the girl whose family drama was whispered about in the corridors. But I held my head high, focusing on my studies and finding solace in books and learning. Mrs. Carter, my English teacher, noticed my diligence. One day after class, she called me over. "Anna, I've seen you pushing yourself hard this year. Ever thought of joining the debate team?" I hesitated, unsure. "I don't know, Mrs. Carter. I'm not sure I'd be any good at arguing." She smiled, her gaze kind but firm. "It's not just about arguing, Anna. It's about learning to stand up and speak out. Think about it." I did think about it, and with a nudge from Aunt Emily, I joined. Debate turned out to be more than just a club, it was a place where I could hone my voice, a skill I'd need more than I realized. Aunt Emily was my biggest cheerleader. "You're going to knock them dead at the competition," she'd say every time I left for a debate meet, her pride evident even though she tried to play it cool. Life wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving, about building something new from the ashes of my old life. Aunt Emily and I became a team, both of us working part-time jobs to keep afloat. She found work at a local library while I took a weekend job at a coffee shop. One evening, as we counted our month's earnings and updated our budget ledger, Aunt Emily put down her pen and looked at me seriously. "Anna, I think it's time you think about college. You've got the brains for it. We can make it work, somehow." From that day on, our plans included college. We researched scholarships late into the night, crafted essays, and filled out applications with painstaking care. Each acceptance letter was a victory, every scholarship a triumph, not just for me, but for us both. College was a whirlwind. I hit the books hard, fueled by every memory of being underestimated back home. Living on campus was different from anything I'd experienced, but I adapted quickly, driven by a mix of excitement and the pressure to prove myself. My roommate, Jess, became one of my closest friends. She was studying business, and we'd often sit up late into the night, swapping study tips and planning our futures. "You ever think about what you'll do after this, Anna?" Jess asked one evening, her book sprawled across our tiny dorm room floor. "I'm going all the way," I replied without hesitation. "Law school. I want to make a difference, you know? Really change things." I thrived on it, pushing myself to be better every day. The long hours and endless reading were exhausting, but every time I wanted to quit, I'd think of Aunt Emily and her belief in me, and that would be enough to keep me going. During my final year, one of my professors, Professor Carter, called me into his office. He was a stern man, known for his tough grading, but he respected hard work. "Anna, your thesis on family law was exceptional. Have you thought about where you might want to work after graduation?" he asked, peering at me over his glasses. "I've been looking at several firms, sir. I want somewhere I can really get into family law, maybe even start a specialty in it," I said, trying to sound as confident as I felt. "Well, I have a recommendation for you. A firm downtown is looking for bright, new talent. I can put in a good word," he offered, his tone suggesting it wasn't an offer he made lightly. "Thank you, Professor Carter. I'd appreciate that very much," I replied, a mix of gratitude and excitement swirling in my chest. I landed the job at the firm right after graduation. It was a prestigious place, the kind where you either sank or swam. I chose to swim. Days turned into nights as I worked on case after case, earning a reputation as a meticulous and fierce advocate. It was at a networking event hosted by the firm where I met Michael, a businessman with a keen interest in the intersections of law and commerce. Our first conversation was about a case I was working on, but it quickly turned personal. 2 years later, we got married in a small ceremony. Aunt Emily was there, tears of joy streaming down her face as she watched me say my vows. "You did it, Anna. You really did," she whispered as she hugged me tight. With Michael's support, I took the biggest leap of my career. I opened my own law firm. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, but I was ready for the challenge. We moved to another state where the market was ripe for a new firm, especially one led by a woman with a fresh perspective. Our firm quickly made a name for itself, and as my professional life flourished, so did my personal life. Michael and I welcomed a son, a joyous addition to our family. Life was full, busy, and deeply satisfying. My law firm's success was more than I could have hoped for, and with each successful case, my reputation grew. This caught the attention of local media, and soon, I was invited to speak on TV about domestic violence. The interview went well, sparking discussions across various social platforms. I received an invitation from the governor's office. I was to be recognized for my contributions to child welfare and family law. As I gave my acceptance speech, thanking those who supported me, I saw Aunt Emily wiping away tears. It was a moment of validation for all the hardships we'd endured together. One day, after a particularly long day at the office, I was walking through the parking lot towards my car when I noticed 2 elderly people looking around uncertainly. As I approached, wondering if they needed help, the recognition hit me hard. They were my parents, who had walked out of my life 20 years ago. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice cool, masking the surprise and rising unease. "Oh, Anna, it's you. We saw you on TV, we knew it was you immediately. We've missed you so much and are so proud of all you've accomplished, my mom said, her voice trembling with emotion. We wanted to reconnect, to be a family again, my dad added, his eyes searching mine for any sign of warmth. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before responding. My family consists of my aunt, my husband, and my son. You chose to leave that family a long time ago. But instead of understanding, they became more insistent. Anna, you're our daughter. We need your help now. Your brother left us, and our business is failing. We have debts, no savings, and we're about to lose our house, my dad explained, his voice desperate. They even hinted at taking legal action if I refused to help, arguing that as their daughter, it was my duty. I couldn't help but laugh, though it was more from disbelief than amusement. Really? You think you can intimidate a lawyer into helping you? You might want to think twice about that, I said sharply. Seeing that their threats were getting them nowhere, they shifted tactics, playing on my emotions. Think about it, Anna. We're your parents. How can you turn us away? I remember very clearly, I replied, my voice steady and firm, how you threw out Aunt Emily and left me behind like I was nothing. Realizing they were getting nowhere, they finally backed down. I handed them some money for their trip back, more out of pity than any sense of duty. This is all I can do for you. Please, don't contact me again. When I got home, I hugged Michael and our son a little tighter. Aunt Emily greeted me with her usual warm smile, and in that moment, I knew I had everything I needed. After meeting my parents, one question lingered in my mind: what had become of Lucas? I utilized my contacts in the police and political circles to track him down. It took weeks of inquiries and waiting, but finally, I got a lead. Lucas had turned his back on our father's dreams of him becoming a mechanic and instead, had embraced his passion for art, living in a distant artist's commune. I hesitated for a moment before calling him. Hello? His voice was cautious, tinged with a curiosity that echoed my own. Lucas, it's Anna. Your sister, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. There was a pause, heavy with years of unsaid words. Anna, wow, this is unexpected. I know it's been a long time. I found out where you were. I hope it's okay that I called. Yeah, of course, he replied, the initial shock giving way to a more relaxed tone. How did you find me? I asked around. I needed to know you were okay, I admitted. The conversation began awkwardly, with each of us tentatively probing the years we'd missed in each other's lives. We agreed to meet at a small cafe halfway between our homes, a neutral ground to rediscover the sibling relationship we'd lost. Sitting across from Lucas a few days later, the initial awkwardness was palpable. So, you're an artist now? I ventured, eager to bridge the gap. Lucas smiled, a genuine, proud smile. Yeah, I am. It's been a tough ride, but I wouldn't change it for anything. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos of vibrant paintings, each a burst of color and emotion. I'm hoping to make a real go of it. His work was impressive, and I felt a surge of pride. They're beautiful, Lucas. You've really found your calling. He shrugged modestly. I'm trying. Dad, he never understood. He wanted me in the shop, but that life was never for me. We talked for hours, gradually easing into a comfortable camaraderie, reconnecting not just as siblings, but as adults who had navigated their own trials. I could introduce you to some people in the art world, I offered, eager to help him pave his way to success. Lucas shook his head, a determined glint in his eye. Thanks, Anna, but I need to do this on my own. I want to prove to myself, and maybe a bit to Dad, that I can make it without any handouts. His words echoed my own journey, and I couldn't help but respect his decision. I understand. Just know I'm here, okay? Whatever you need. As we parted ways, Lucas handed me one of his smaller paintings, a beautiful landscape bathed in sunset hues. For you, to remember today. Driving home, I placed the painting on the passenger seat, a smile playing on my lips. Lucas and I were more alike than I'd realized. We were both determined to forge our own destinies, independent yet connected by our shared resilience.